Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Building Better with Bears. Yes, that's right, Building Better with Bears. This is episode 3, and we're going to do something a little different. This could be episode 4. I haven't done Building with Bears in a while, but we're going to do something a little different today. I recently was on the Vector Punch server, and I was having a conversation with 2Punch, and he was convinced that he wasn't a good builder, and I couldn't think of a better way to argue with him than to make a video addressing the topic of why people think they aren't good builders. The biggest thing they come down to is everything I build just doesn't look good. And I always respond with, technically my builds, they can look unique and have a specific feel to them, and they look, they look pretty cool, but really they come down to a mathematical formula. Every one of my builds technically shares the same concept, the same floor plan, and so I wanted to share my specific building starting place so you guys can maybe take that and go from there as well. It's the most useful thing I've ever done in terms of being able to just start a project and build something. And what I mean by it being mathematical, no, you don't have to count or anything. Well, you gotta count, but there's no math. There's no real math except counting. Most of my builds will have either a 3-block space or a 5-block space, and very, very rarely will they be 7, 9, or 11. But if they end up being spaced this far, what tends to happen is it gets divided up. Okay, so that's not evenly divided, so we would go to 11, and that goes there, and just like that we have an even divide 3-block space. So there really is no 11-block spacers because that just divides into 3-block space. Okay, or it can divide into 2 5-block spaces. But that's how it always is, though. Every build is a 3-block space, a 5-block space, a 9-block space, or not a 9-block space, a 7-block space, because you get an even divide. But every build follows the same formula, and I'm going to demonstrate that by just making up something. It's basically the only thing we have to make sure that we are on top of is the length of space that the pillars are going to have from each other, and I just go 1 block. We're going to do something very, very simple here. We're just going to make a rectangle, and as you can see, it's quite easy. In fact, there's a certain point where you don't even have to count anymore, because I'm just lining it up with these blocks as I'm placing them, and then just eyeballing it for the center. Like, after you count the first few out, you can usually eyeball the rest. And so from here, I always bring them up exactly 4 blocks in height total. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 blocks in height, and I do that with all of them. So they all come up 4 blocks in height, and then, nope, that's 5 blocks. Once they're all at 4 blocks, it's easier to count if I am not speaking. So we come up the last one. Once they're at 4 blocks in height, you end up with something that looks like this. Very easily, and this is super easy to do in survival. In fact, I do most of my building in survival. You just connect them up. That's all. You just bring the pillar across, and just like that, you're going to have the frame for the first story of your house. Just like that, you have the first story of your house already framed out. If you want to get into little details, because you can see that the textures don't line up here, just put a block pointing out here, and it gives it that impression that these logs are sitting on top of each other, interlocking. And again, super simple. We haven't even changed our block. Our block palette has stayed entirely the same, spruce log, the entire time. Have our first story. And I like to build the entire frame up of the house. There's several options you can do for a second story. You can build up on all of the already existing pillars all the way around, and you can be as creative or as imaginative as you guys want, and you just bring it up again. It's 4 blocks in height if that's where you want to be, and then the pillars that come across, just like that. I mean, how easy was that second story? Or you can pick a spot, say here for example, bring a beam across That way you have a place to put this middle bit. Now you have created a section where you can have a second story and you have a balcony. So right here you would end up putting in a floor and fences along the sides, and you have a balcony on your second story. Okay, that's pretty easy. So what's another option we can do up here? We can also, instead of putting them right here, we can put the pillars on the edges of it. This gives your classic medieval look, where floor space, actual realty was hard to come by. Villages tended to be small, and therefore you weren't allowed to take up a lot of ground space. So what they did was they got clever and they took up more airspace, and so you'd end up with a smaller first story but a larger second story, and in some cases even an even larger third story. And where the houses would be side by side, so if we had another house, say it's right here, they wouldn't build out to the side of these buildings. Instead, they would build towards the front and back streets or wherever they had space. So in this particular build, so this one would come 4 blocks up. We'll just build the front facade real quick. Because they couldn't go out to the side, they would really emphasize going out in this direction. And in some cases, you'd even have where these come out really far, and they would have some kind of support structure in place for these to help keep the building standing. And then the beams would even be this far out, and so you'd end up getting a lot of space out of not a lot of ground area. And so that's kind of how they went with it. So when you put your beams, your pillars, on these outside pegs, you really start striking a medieval look, because you are naturally acquiring more floor space without taking up more ground space. Just wanted to give some examples of how easy it is to actually put something together in this game, despite people's fears. I think that's the biggest thing. I think people are just afraid that their thing is going to look bad. And you know what? Your build is going to look bad. Your build is going to look bad until it's done. If it still looks bad to you, your build is not done yet. This looks bad. Obviously, this build is not done. We need to put in walls to help bring this to life. So we're going to come through and we're going to bring in walls. And you could do classic squares like this, and you could call that a wall, but it doesn't look good. But that's what we're going to do for now. We're just going to do the front. Okay, we got our front wall done. We got where the windows are going to go. Something still doesn't look right. Okay, it's because it's not done yet. We're going to come in and add further support, make it look like these guys are connected. That's looking better. I'd say it's not done yet. How about if we put them on the bottom? Okay, that's starting to look pretty good. Something still looks a little funny. Maybe it's the window. Let's put our windows in. So I hope this is a good example of your builds evolve. They just evolve as you work on them. And something about the windows doesn't quite look right. I'm going to replace these full blocks with a stair. And maybe also the bottom one. Oh, okay, there we go. Now it's starting to look even better, because now it looks like the window is being framed as well. Okay, that's actually looking pretty good. Okay, these front beams poking out are starting to look a little blank. Maybe we'll try, putting some support stairs under it, so it looks like they got a more rounded, supported look. That looks pretty good. What about if we try walls? We'll try a couple different variations. Oops, put that one over there. And fence. Okay, which one do we like best? So there's a bunch of different variations of using fence and cobble wall. In fact, there's an argument to be made for using all of these in this build. We also could do something as far as, give me my cracked stone bricks. Maybe this build's been here for a long time and it's starting to fall apart a little bit. Okay, simple enough. We'll just leave that one alone. Easy enough. We just swapped out some normal bricks for some cracked bricks. Well, what if we're building in a swamp? Also, guess what grows in swamps? Plants. So it makes sense that you would have some moss life growing into your build. So that's another thing to consider, I suppose, is your exact environment. That your environment has a lot to do with what your build is ultimately going to look like. Right now we're building in a super flat world, so it's very easy to lay out flat. Well, let's imagine for a moment that this isn't a super flat world. Let's imagine for a moment that it is a normal world. One where things spawn in naturally, we have rolling hills. Ooh, I didn't notice that over there. And you want to build your house here. You don't have to flatten anything. Just do the exact same thing. Place our block in, 3 block space, 3 block space, 3 block space, and just keep following it. Just keep following that 3 block space, and you see we got a 1 block lip. That's not a whole lot, that doesn't demonstrate too much, but you can see that there clearly is an elevation difference. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to bring up all of my pillars so they're at the same height as the highest point. If these happen to reach, say 4 blocks in height, reaching the highest point, then I'm probably going to do some terraforming on the inside of the house. And this would just end up being the tall pillar. And then the second story would start here, for example. But since that is not the case for me, we're going to bring these up too. And this can go either way. You can either determine that the lowest point of your logs, your pillars, will be the main point. So this is 4 blocks in height, and if we're deciding that the lowest point, which would be these row of logs because they're on the lowest Y level, we're going to say that this has reached 4 blocks in height. We're going to say that this is the maximum height for the first story. 4 blocks in height is the magic number. Okay, that works, and then basically we just come in and we start terraforming blocks out, and that would end up being our interior. Or you can take the highest point, and this is only 3, so we'll bring this up 4 blocks in height, and that's going to make this back row actually 5 blocks tall, and that actually opens you up for some extra building fun, if you will. So we still want our same floor to be at the correct height. So if I grab some bricks real quick. Alright, so we want our main walls to be in all at the correct height for where these walls are going to be, which is this little 3x3 with the window hole missing for each one. One of them, gets the doorway. But what do we do with the back? The back's going to be a little funny because in order for it to have its 3x3, it now has this double tall block situation going on, which doesn't look super great from the outside. So what can you do with that? Well, have fun with it, really. Be creative, be imaginative. These things this is Minecraft, you can do whatever you want. Don't be limited by your perception of what you think is a good and bad build. Just keep building. That's the most important thing, is to just keep building. It's when you give up on yourself or your build that things start to fall apart. And if you don't want your build to fall apart, don't give up on it. Just like that, with a little tinkering around, and that was truly it. I was making this up as I went along. I don't know, I think this looks pretty good. I can see one thing that I would like to add to it. If we grab some gates, we put some gates along the top, and we will open them, and we can put in fences along the side. There we go. For a first story, that looks pretty good. And this is built on a lip. This is built going downhill. You can do this on any face, any amount of height. It's just deciding where you want your floor to be, and that'll determine where this cutoff is. So you can see this block is actually where the floor is. You'd be standing on top of that stair block, and you would be deciding where your floor is, and then the pillars on the outside you would make structure. You'd make it look supported. You'd run them all the way to the ground, and you would add a bunch of blocks to it to make it look like it's structurally supported. The builds look good because they have a feeling of realism to them, and so that's something I think everyone should strive for, is a little hint of realism, and that will definitely improve your builds. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys build a different way. Let me know down in the comments. Am I being presumptuous? Am I being a little hard on you guys? Is building just not possible for some of you? I don't think so, but prove it. Prove me wrong. show me your best build, and I'll let you know if I think you're just that inch away from making it to being a great build. Because I think everyone out there is a good builder. I think you just need a good structural foundation to get yourself started with. And I hope that this video was at the very least entertaining, but also informative of a nice place of where you guys can start with your foundations. Once you get the hang of the foundations, building the rest of it, it's easy. It's like building the foundation is like doing all the corner pieces of a puzzle. Then the rest of it's kind of easy after that. Yeah, it's still a puzzle, you still have to put it together, but it's a lot easier when you have the foundation. And I hope this video was informative and instructive on how you guys can possibly start your foundations. So thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, share with your friends, hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next one.